Hello and welcome to this little bit of unusual video, at least like for me. It doesn't usually happen. So it's going to be very likely raw and probably unedited in, well, any actual way. But putting that aside, I'm going to go through the general way that you play Druid at midnight, some of the changes and what's pretty much overall good right now. I did set up some notes, kind of, but well, we'll see how it goes, I suppose. Starting off with talents, in general, coming from, Woden into Midnight, our gameplay has improved in many, many ways. The biggest one being we have consistent ways to spread HOTS without any kind of RNG involved, because they changed Poverty Druid to now be a guarantee from Swift Mending, because it's attached to your Soul of the Forest. And other than that, of course, there's like some minor things like increased regrowth healing and whatnot. But the biggest one is just simply the new Apex talent. Which essentially, the new gameplay revolves around getting as many Soul of the Forest as you can and consuming them, because it also interacts with your Apex talent. So it gives you a lot of AoE healing every time you consume Soul of the Forest, because of the, the second node, which is like Light Bloom splashes to other people, but also gives you a lot of spot healing on a person because it blooms 5 times immediately from the last Apex talent. And essentially, that Light Bloom also gives you verdancy for the people standing in F-flow. So it's essentially like every 15 seconds, you get spiky AoE healing and crazy spot healing potentially, depending on what you need to do. Like essentially, like the new gameplay just revolves around that, like swapping your light blooms around when you need to, and trying to be like efficient with how you spend your priority Druid. Because essentially, most of the time, I'm going to be spreading reduce because it gives you mastery value, right? It gives you abundance stacks as well, which is nice. But it's also because reduce are actually doing healing numbers these days. And in case you don't, believe that, I can show you generally like any like logs of like recent keys, like for example from today. Typically reju for me is always second in my breakdowns. It tends to be usually second. And like thriving also does like a small percentage, which is not bad. It's between, I would say like 2.5 to 3.3%. I've noticed. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. You still will spread regrowths. You still do a lot of regrowths potentially. Depends on, what you're doing. But for me, I find it to be mostly like reduce. But anyway, that's kind of like the general gist of the gameplay. You just simply Soul the Forest Swiftmans and abusing your Apex talent as much as you can. Just squeeze every possible moment that you can. Other than that, there are some talent choices you can make. Like this is generally the build that I've been running for the past, I'll say like 2 weeks at least. At this point, I feel like, roughly. There's been like many iterations of, well, some small changes I would say, but like many iterations of like what talents I've been playing. At the very beginning, we were playing 1 stack of Thriving, so you can get 3 seconds duration on regrowth and Nature's Bounty. When Nature's Bounty used to be 40%, now it's only 20% of regrowth, like, in terms of cleaving. It's still decent, but, like, unless you're leaning very heavily into regrowth gameplay, which is also, like, a thing to mention, you can either, like, lean way more into, like, reduce and then fill in the gaps with regrowths, or you can lean even more into regrowths and then fill the gaps in with reduce instead. Both gameplays are viable, but regrowth spam is way more mana intense, as you can probably guess, since, regrowths are not cheap without abundance stacks, right? It's quite expensive, in fact, which is why I don't really do that. But you can do that. I've also played Double Regenesis at some point, which was also fine. It didn't feel that bad, honestly. I played Nature's Bounty Reforestation, and, like, you would be excited at the prospect of getting Tree of Life every minute, because it's, based on swiftments, right? And it's only for like every 4 swiftments, so it's a bit, you know, it's like every 1 minute. The problem with that is it feels very, very awkward in terms of the timing of when it happens, right? Because most of the time you want to be swift mending as much as you physically can, right? And because of this, it kind of interacts badly with reforestation due to the just natural timings, I guess. Because you don't really want to hold swiftmend. You want to get as many Soldier Forests so you can get as much Apex talent healing as possible, as many reduce as possible, as much abundance as possible. It just doesn't really work out well enough, if that makes sense, right? It just doesn't really interact particularly well. It's counterintuitive, right? Then I've also played at some point, I tried Regenerative Heartwood and Nurturing Dormancy, and it also didn't really work out. Because, like, you would think, like, because you spread a lot of rejuice, that, you know, you would get, like, a lot of funnel healing from your Iron Bark. But in reality, what happened is, like, it just ended up, like, overhealing a lot and just doing very minimal HPS, and essentially just made my Iron Bark 16 seconds, which is nice, but not necessary. And as for Nurturing Dormancy, most of the time I feel like it just either gets wasted or just simply never extends because people are just taking damage, so it just doesn't really end up doing anything. There was a point where I also played like Flourish and Inner Peace. And I mean, Flourish is pretty pointless in keys. It's just a mana save, basically. There's no real point of playing it. And Inner Peace can have its niche uses, but it's also like a little bit awkward to take as a talent point, because then you're like left with 1 talent point, and what the fuck do you do with this talent point, you know? It's like you put it in maybe Nature's Bounty, but then like you have 6 second regrowths only. You put it in 1 Thriving, but then it's like you don't really care about the duration of those regrowths that much. Like the duration, I mean, it can be useful sometimes, but you know, it's kind of situational. It's mostly scuffed though. Like the best like iteration so far has been just to put it in Double Thriving pretty much, for the simple reason that your rejuves are still quite powerful by themselves, you know, like especially like, you know, when you spread them, because you do a lot. The initial healing that the talent does is like respectable, but also like your regrowths are lasting 12 seconds again, because in this expansion, by default, it's only 6. They nerfed the duration of regrowths hot. And this just fixes it back to where it used to be, pretty much. Well, I mean, it's still, you know, on Rito it's like 18 instead of, you know, like in Within instead of like 12, but, you know. It becomes more usable, the hot stays longer, and you get more mastery value. That's the general idea behind why you play Thriving. And other than that, I mean, none of the other talents really feel particularly useful, so they're not really worth mentioning. And I know that people are curious about Keeper versus Wildstalker. This is a question I get on stream very often, more than I would like even, but well, what can you do? But essentially, it just boils down to Wildstalker has more DPS, and better healing increases, like, more often, right? Because the thing is, like, Keeper relies on Grove Guardians, and Grove Guardians only last 8 seconds expansion, and you can only have, most of the time, 2 of them. Because you have, like, you know, Swiftmend and you have Wild Growth. Like, you're Swiftmending all the time, because you want Soldier Forest, so it just naturally happens. And you Wild Growth from Mastery all the time, so that also naturally happens. But they only last 8 seconds, right? And the entire purpose of Keeper is to try to have as many of them as you can, as much as you can, right? So like this ends up being like 10% most of the time, which is worse than Vigorous Creepers, which is 20% always, and procs pretty often, honestly. And well, this is not bad, that it's buffing your Libel and Rejuve and stuff by 20%, right? It's not bad. But that's the thing. Because they last only 8 seconds, it just ends up being like a little burst healing moment type of a profile, I guess, if that makes sense. The other thing is like Dream Surge and the Dryad are just straight up useless. And the Spirit of the Thicket, all these talents just don't really do anything. Keys. Whereas with Wildstalker, you have a lot of passive healing from something like Bursting Growth. You have 6% healing on all of your hots by default without doing anything at all. You have Vigorous Creepers, which is proccing all the time because you have a lot of Blooms, which are also proccing more because of your other passive talents. You have more self-healing, which, you know, you have DR with Keeper, but you already play high verse and you can bear from stuff. You don't need the DR, so it's just pretty pointless. It's usually just better to just have more self-healing, typically. And well, you know, like you can have like longer duration or even like percentage increase, although I believe the duration is better to have longer duration of vigorous creepers on people with your symbiotic blooms. And you know, you have some nice passive healing increases on relevant things like Rejuve Flow and Light Bloom, which is kind of nice. And well, you know, obviously like you do more damage because you play like physical things, and Keeper just does negative damage in general. It doesn't do anything for your damage whatsoever. Whereas Wildstalker does so much more for your damage. And healer damage is a problematic topic right now in Midnight, as you probably are well aware or have heard at least. But I would say this pretty much covers the topic of talents. For the most part, I mean, there's like things that you would be like, oh, you know, what about Call the Elder Druid in like in Dreamer scenarios, right? Like, what about those? It's not even worth taking these talents, because the thing is you're sacrificing healing to get them, and it's not even worth it. Like, the extra damage from cold is minimal, and I mean, you would rather heal things manually at that point than relying on like shredding and or swiping and praying that it heals the right targets, because it's a single target smart heal in the case of shred, and mild AoE healing with swipe, right? It's just not good enough. You don't have free talent points to be wasting on that. It's just not relevant. And in the case of Tranquil Mind, because I know some people have asked before, you don't care about clear casts anymore. They removed the entire clear cast gimmick of like empowering your regrowths and all that gameplay with double life bloom and stuff. It's not really relevant anymore. You don't need it. It doesn't do anything. What is relevant, however, is Nature's Splendor. And for the reason why it's relevant is because in this expansion, they changed Nature's Swiftness from 200% increase on regrowth all the way down to 60. Only 60, right? So taking Nature's Splendor instead of, you know, Tranquil Mind, which doesn't even do anything anymore, brings it back up to 95, which is close to the original, which was 100. But it makes your Convokes still powerful with Nature's Swiftness and Convoke, you know, like in a macro, as, you know, people tend to do, right? Like, you know, you just, it's a simple macro, just shoulder tip for Convoke, cast Nature's Swiftness, and then cast Convoke. It looks kind of like this, right? And when this happens, like every single regrowth that Convoke casts is empowered, and it doesn't even consume it. And well, yeah, this is the other problem that Keeper has. Outside of Convoke, it does not have that many heal increases from Harmony the Growth and from Paro Nature. Because Convoke can cast Wild Growths and Swiftmans, right? So you can get like a bunch of trees for a heal increase, but only during Convoke, so it's like a small window where you can be powerful in the sense of like healing increase, whereas Wildstalker is all the time. Right? That's kind of the general gist of the situation. And obviously cultivation is useless because it's not a hot anymore, so that's not even worth even mentioning. Improved wall growth is only played for raid, and unstoppable growth is generally useless because it's too expensive, and wall growth is only used for mastery and swift mendable in general as like a hot on people. Now the next thing would be that I, you know, have noticed is like people tend to go over like stats and stuff, right? And well, stats are very similar to what they used to be, with the one exception of like this expansion, it seems like 31% haste is enough. I've played, let's say, what is it, like at least 3.5 weeks maybe with 40% haste, and you can very easily, you know, rewind my YouTube uploads, like you know, like from many weeks ago, and you can see from the logs that I have linked in the descriptions that is the case, right? But as of recent weeks, I've changed to 31%, and it plays basically the exact same. There is no real difference. It's like you're just basically wasting stats, right? And I've converted this 9-ish, 10-ish% haste into more versatility, and it gives me more damage and more survivability and more healing. So there's that. In terms of general stats, you want, like, to my understanding, it seems to be like around 1040, 1045-ish, which ends up being 31%. And then after that, you want at least 40% mastery. I don't think I would play below that, to be honest. And then, you know, as much verse as your gear physically allows you. That would be my recommendation. And I mean, gems and stuff, I mean, just make, you know, just gem whatever, like, makes sense. I mean, of course, like, you want the main stat gem, because that one is quite powerful, this expansion. Because if you want to use, like, the mixed ones are... Oops. The mixed ones are not particularly good. they are less main stat, which doesn't end up being worth it. Because if you wanted to play like maximum mana, which is just pointless because you don't as a Resto Druid if you play correctly, or for raid even, I mean, you still wouldn't really help you. It gives you a little bit less main stat, right? And if you're trying to play the critical one, it also gives you a little bit less. And the thing is, like, I'm not convinced that the tiny little effects on them are particularly worth it, at least for keys. For raid, maybe you would play it because you would have like, you know, a bit more flexibility with your mixed gems in your gear, right? Potentially. In keys, though, I don't really care about the maximum mana, and the critical thingy does not really do shit for me, so I'm just going to play the main stat one personally, which is what I'm doing the entire beta. That also allows me freedom with my gems. Most of them, as you notice, are like pure green ones, kinda, for, you know, reaching my goal of 31% haste. Because I've, you know, I've changed some stuff around, so like I have a bunch of like verse mastery items and, you know, double mastery trinkets which proc me main stat and stuff. It's quite optimized gear at this point, right? That aside, though, the next topic would be probably the most important one. How it essentially plays, pretty much. And like the core gameplay is very similar to how it used to play in Raid before. It's pretty much just maintain your life bloom on, you know, ideally your tank most of the time, because he's the one that's going to be taking the most damage. And, you know, while you're on the run, you can just rejuve him and prepare him to be swift mendable immediately. Like, you know, like, if you, well, you know, if you want to pretend that this is a key, which, you know, it's a follower dungeon right now, because I'm not in a dungeon with people, so it's a bit, you know, difficult to show. But essentially, like, as you're running, you can already prepare a rejuve, you know, you engage the pack in whatever capacity you want to do, you swift mend, and then you hold your Soul of the Forest until something happens. Then you want a wild growth before damage happens, of any kind, right? And then you want rejuve immediately to consume that, which also gives you like a spike heal from your life bloom target because of the Apex talent, right? The second talent, which splashes from life bloom. That gives you AoE healing. And the last Apex talent gives you very, very high spike damage, so spike healing on a particular person. That one would be better illustrated when I kill this back real quick and tell my dudes to stop attacking because they're gonna give me combat. And then we switch over real quick to a video example, which would be better, of course. I would prefer to play the key like live, but it's morning. There's not many keys, so you're gonna have to make do with what I have. But essentially, you see it. I'm doing the same thing here, right? As the key is beginning, I'm immediately like, I mean, honestly, even before the key even begins, I'm already like, you know, because, well, partially it's boredom, but it's also like, you can set up before things even happen, right? Like, you light boom your tank, you rejuve him, you swift mend, you can, and then you can consume it before the key starts, since you lose some buffs when the key starts. And now I'm gonna just continue doing the same thing. So like, I have a rejuve ready, I have a light bloom ready on the tank, and we're running into the pool, right? I'm just gonna bleed some stuff because there's nothing happening on the screen right now at all, right? And then as usual, I'm gonna wild growth before damage happens, and then we immediately consume my Soul of the Forest, which gives the tank a spike heal and splash heals us. And then like the reduce and the wild growth, and ideally if he's standing in Netflow, he gets a bunch of passive healing all the time, like for, you know, the period of time. And like, you're gonna see the main general idea is just continue doing that. Maintain your life bloom, spread reduce it if you need them manually or through Soul of the Forests. And, you know, sometimes you hold your Soul of the Forest for a couple seconds and then you spend it immediately. So here, I'm going to be swift mending like a wild growth before damage because there's going to be some absorbs coming, right? We know the mechanics. Immediately swift mend the tank. And in this case, I'm going to hold my Soul of the Forest a little bit because the heal absorbs didn't happen yet. He just took random damage from one of the enforcer mobs. Because one of these like rat bone enforcers, this one, does some random damage to some people, right? So like, it's a one-time hit. We know this, so we don't need to spend our Soul of the Forest yet. Now we're gonna get some healing absorbs. So his gets rid of very quickly. I swap my life bloom to the hunter, and then I consume Soul of the Forest, and look at what's gonna happen to his heal absorb, right? Instantaneously disappears because my life bloom blooms 5 times instantaneously, right? From the Apex talent. That's the power of the Apex talent. You get insane spot healing every single time, right? And once that's done, I immediately swap it back to the tank, apply manual rejuve, and then you just reposition and start doing some bleeds, Swiftmend him immediately, and hold my Soul of Forest for the next pull. Or the next damaging event. Continue bleeding stuff because nothing is happening on the screen with chain pulling, I guess. Wild Growth for Mastery, and consume my Soul of Forest again for a spike heal on the tank. I Wild Growth because it gives him Mastery value, and it also just makes my, Soul of Forest consumption that much more powerful because of Mastery, right? Again, same story. Swiftmend is back, I immediately spike heal the tank, right? And then now we're just gonna bleed some stuff until something happens. I'm still holding my Soul of Forest, Wild Growth again, and then rejuve myself. The tank gets a spike heal from that. I get a spike heal from him, and my Heal Absorb gets healed because of that too. And again, I'm just gonna Swiftmend, and I'm gonna Wild Growth if I need to, and I'm just gonna, well, if I need to, of course, like I Wild Growth, and then I consume Soul of Forest. That's typically what I tend to do. Sometimes if you don't have time to Wild Growth, you can just consume it on like a, like either rejuve or a regrowth situation, I'm speaking, of course. Now that's gonna be Dispel, Swiftmend him, DPS a bit because he's stabilized, because I also barked him simultaneously, Wild Growth, and consume my Soul of Forest again. He gets a heal from rejuve and Wild Growth. He gets a big spike healed and the rejuve because he's in proximity, so he gets a natural hot, and his HP is going to be stable once again. It's just a continuous, constant dance of doing the same thing, right? I have Soul of Forest here. I know that the Evoker is not going to take more damage. I already applied a manual rejuve and Wild Growth to him, so he's fine. And we're also holding Nature's Witness because we convoked earlier, right? If you don't regrowth, it doesn't get consumed, which is like the beauty of it. And it's still going on cooldown simultaneously, right? So it's not being wasted either in that sense. That's gonna be a Dispel very likely. Actually, no, I just consume Soul of Forest here and just heal him that way. Could have also been a Dispel. I Wild Growth, Swiftmend again, and again I'm gonna hold it a bit because we don't know what's gonna happen, right? I'm waiting for either like damage to happen to the group or to the tank. If it's gonna expire, of course I'm gonna spend it. So here I'm gonna probably just rejuve because it's gonna expire otherwise. Yeah, and then it went on the Hunter conveniently, and if I needed to, I could do like one more heal or just Dispel. But it got healed in naturally anyway, so it didn't really matter. And again, I'm holding a Soul of Forest for the next pull. In this case, I'm going to spend it on a rejuve because nothing is going to happen, unfortunately. And again, Swiftmend immediately. I don't care if the Swiftmend healing is getting wasted. I want Soul of Forest, right? Wild Growth for Mastery, Insta Rejuve, and look at them. They're going to be just fine. And the tank also still gets a passive heal from my Apex talent healing him. It's just a wonderful, wonderful little constant dance you're doing the entire key. And yeah, these gargoyles, you can either shadow melt them, which is what I did here, or if you are in human form and you rake them to shapeshift, it freedoms you. It doesn't work with regular shapeshift, but it works with going into shapeshift with rake. That's just a little bonus for you in case you care, I guess. But it's what I'm going to continue doing the entire key, pretty much. It's just a constant dance of like consuming my Soul of Forest and swapping my light bombs around as I need to. Right? Like right now I haven't really done that much because we're fighting trash. So let's move on to a boss, for example. We should be fighting Forge Master Garfrost first, I believe. And yes, this is kind of turning into like more like a commentary than an actual quote-unquote guide or whatever you want to call it, but that's just how it is. I don't make the rules. Well, I mean I do, but what are you going to do about it? The other thing I guess that I should mention is like in case before like realistically stuff happens is like the way you do damage is quite simple. Essentially, like you're just spreading rakes as much as you can, and ideally you want to put rips on between 2 to 4 combo points on pretty much like whichever target doesn't have one. The idea behind that is essentially you want to get like as many Bloodseeker Vines as you can, which is like this little icon here. And what it does is like it gives you a 6% damage increase versus the target, which is awesome because your bleeds hit harder. But it's also like when they expire, it gives you bursting growth, which is like a soft capped AoE splash damage mechanic from your Wildstalker talent tree. Right? So it's very, very good to do that. And again, you're gonna see the same thing, right? Like I'm continuously still Swiftmending, I'm still holding my Soul of the Forest in between all those things. And the other thing is like you have like how did the world get changed, which I guess I should show in game. But essentially they changed Heart of the Wild these days, it's no longer like a 5-minute cooldown, like, you know, like physical damage amplification. Now it's just simply a one-time use that just gives you Feral Frenzy. And the reason why that's relevant is because it gives you a very high single target burst damage. From a healer perspective, right? It's very strong in that sense. For me, I mean, I don't know if you care about this or not, but for me, I've done like one little thing here. Like, I have a macro that uses my main stat potion, and also uses my Feral Frenzy as like a, you know, get my pot up for healing purposes and damage purposes, and also just applies my bleed. And then I also put my bleed manually, because sometimes I want to hold my potion, right? Like, it's a little min-max thing you could do, you know? Like, because it gives you like very high burst on a particular target for damage purposes. So it's a useful thing to do in my opinion. And the reason why I have it separate away is like a separate keybind for only my Feral Frenzy Heart of the Wild, is because sometimes, like, you know, there's like an upcoming boss or something, or a pool where I want to hold my potion, right, for like maybe like a healing purpose as well, not just damage, right? So that's the reason why I do that too, in case it was relevant. That's the reasoning, at least. But essentially, like, what you do with Feral Frenzy is like, you apply it to ideally like a target that doesn't have like a big rip. Like, you know, like you just see what I just did. His rip was expiring, the other ones are already, you know, ripped. So I just Feral Frenzy and I apply like a fresh rip on him with a high duration. The idea there is just simply like just to catch up on my bleeds. You do want to use it like at the start of like a pool, potentially, for like a little bit of a burst damage, but also to get like easy combo points so you can spread more rips like quicker, you know? The other thing is like, Feral Frenzy is a active dynamic buff, right? So like, let's say like, for example, like you have like 1 or 2 or 3 combo points or something, right? And you Feral Frenzy, if you're quick enough with your button presses, you can apply a rip between the combo points that Feral Frenzy gives you, and that way you can apply multiple rips on like 2 targets, let's say, for example, right? If you're quick with it. It's like a little min-max you can do. It is relevant, of course. The other thing is like, for a relevancy of min-maxing damage, you know, when you can, obviously, because, you know, you're a healer at the end of the day, you want to ideally be convoking the target that has a Bloodseeker Vine on it. Because the way Convoke works is basically like, if you're looking at a target and the target is in your melee and you're in, you know, ideally in cat form, of course, every single bite that Convoke casts will be on the target that you're looking at. They changed this in War Within. So like, if you're trying to min-max damage and your Convoke doesn't need to be used for healing, you can use it for damage. Just pay attention to which target has a Bloodseeker Vine and you swap to that target and Convoke. The reason for that is that you basically can you force proc Bloodseeker, like your Bloodseeker Vines to instantly explode for bursting grow damage, right? And bursting grow damage is kind of your AoE, you know? It's like a splash damage mechanic, as you can read, right? When your vines expire, or if you bite a Bloodseeker Vine, they just explode for like, you know, whatever physical amount of damage, and it's soft capped, right? It's like a little min-max you do with your Convokes for damage purposes. It is very relevant, especially at the start of pools. You can get like a little big burst of damage, you know? Besides Feral Frenzy, of course. Don't know if you care, but this is just, you know, we're on the topic, so I might as well mention it. It is a bit of a min-max thing that you can do with your Convokes if you don't need them for healing. It's relevant. You will notice like a little bit of a damage gain if you do it properly. And now here on this boss, I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive with swapping my life booms around. So again, I'm doing the exact same thing, right? As you can see. We can even go slower if you want. Well, I mean, I doubt it. You need me to do that, but, you know. Right, like, I immediately swift-mended as this fly started, I wild growth, and I instantaneously rejuve spread. This boss is all about rot damage, right? So rejuve is our friend. You will still regrowth, but again, most of the time you're gonna just spread rejuice. Depends on how you play. If you prefer regrowths, that's fine. Just keep in mind your mana will be burnt, and you still will need to apply rejuice anyway, which is why I recommend rejuice spread instead. But here we're already doing what I mentioned before, which is like swapping your life bloom around. And look what's gonna happen because of this, right? I swift-mend a different person, consume it on the hunter, and look at what happens to the evoker cell, right? He instantaneously gets spiked up, right? I swift-mend hunter because he's low HP. I had wild growth already up. I spread the rejuve, and boom, 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 he's full HP, right? Which is why we want to do that. little min-max with your apex talents. It's a very big difference in impactfulness of like people's health bars, right? It is very relevant to do if you, especially like if you know that like a person is in trouble for one particular reason or another. Maybe they just don't have enough buttons or something, you know. Same thing, Wild Growth, Swiftmend, and I'm gonna just consume it immediately to make sure that people are full HP before the Stomp. And then I'm gonna trank for a couple of ticks and then move away because the Swirly will one-shot me if I stand in it. And I'm just gonna continue doing that. Swap my Light Bloom around the bunch, Swiftmend as much as I can, Wild Growth before damage, into... I also swapped my symbiotic relationship here, I believe on tank, I'm not sure, I didn't see. I think it was on tank because I don't give him as much healing. But same thing, you know, Wild Growth before damage, Rejuve spread immediately, manual Rejuve on tank because he unfortunately didn't get it, it went on me instead of him because I was closer, I guess. Swap my Light Bloom again, like it's very active gameplay. It's very simple but very active and very, very, very efficient. He's line of sighting me here, that's why I cannot do anything to him. So here, I'm going to have to swap my Light Bloom, Wild Growth again, and insta-consume to top him. There are some cases, I will do it a little bit later on this fight, but essentially, I hold my Soul of the Forest for after he stomps, if people are full HP, and then consume it to get like a spike kill on everybody immediately, right? Because he's still ticking you with his passive damage aura after the stomp, right? Here I couldn't do that obviously because people are not full HP, so I just have to consume immediately. I'm also going to have to like do some nature swiftness shenanigans here into insta swiftmend, into consume and empower. And you know, then the mage gets stopped instead of the hunter because I topped the hunter with my swiftmend. Here's a little healing convoke into a swiftmend again, refresh my Light Bloom, do some cat weaving because you know we're healthy. Into a Wild Growth, into a Rejuve spread again, and just continue doing that. Either spread Rejuves manually or regrowth people to top them. Swiftmend again, Light Bloom again, Wild Growth before damage, I bark, I Wild Growth, and here I'm going to do what I mentioned earlier because we're all healthy as hell. I'm holding, Stomp happens, I bear from, boom, and I consume, right? And then Mage gets stopped instantly, Hunter gets stopped a bit, and Evoker is also getting stabilized, kind of, give or take. He's also in scale, so he's not going to die regardless, so don't really care that much. And again, same thing, right? Swiftmend, hold a little bit, Wild Growth, and Rejuve spread. And I mean, you can see, right, I'm doing 170k HPS, my mana has barely moved at all. If this was regrowth gameplay, you would be already at like 60. Since you have to do like regrowths and rejuves on top of that, right? Whereas like with rejuves, people are already kind of like mostly healthy. I'm mentioning this because I know that different people have different preferences. He died to a swelly here, in case you care. That is not a healing issue. That is a dodge, please. But yeah. Same story here. I made us healthy with healing convoke, so I'm just gonna hold my Soul of the Forest, bear from again for the initial for me, and bark, and instantaneously empower, and look at them, right? Hunter is insta-fine, Mage has Ice Cold, so he's not gonna die regardless, but I just top him with Nature Swiftness that I've been holding since convoke. Right? It's just like, it's all about making these like constant decisions throughout the fight. Here I just did a regrowth for the lols, because, you know, I just wanted to see that regrowths are definitely still powerful. But it wasn't for you in particular, but it was like, it was for stream, because I was also showing it on stream that like, because I think somebody was asking about like gameplay, like of like talents and stuff, so it's a perfect example actually, you know, in a sense. But here, like, you see what I have to do because Swiftmend wasn't ready. Again, and I did this exact same thing, I consume and like Mage gets stopped immediately, right? There I could have maybe consumed it a little bit earlier just to make sure that people are full HP, but it didn't seem like it was necessary at the end of the day. And it's just all about doing these constant decisions throughout the entire key. That's kind of the general gist of like how Resto Druid plays right now, or how you can play it. The alternative obviously being like to spam more regrowths with your Soul of the Forest instead of Rejuves. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you see like Rejuve is doing actual fucking crank and healing numbers. It's crazy. Regrowth, Rejuve, Light Bloom. Everbloom is your apex talent. And then Efflow is combined with Verdancy. Like, top 5 should always look like that. Well, Rejuve doesn't have to be first if you don't play like, you know, like me, like if you're spamming Rejuves, right? If you're spamming Regrowth, Regrowth would be number 1, and then Rejuve would be second, and then Light Bloom, and then Everbloom, and then Efflow, and then, you know, Wild Growth, and etc, etc, right? Like, it'd be like slightly shifted, but similar, kinda. It's just how the fight works, right? And again, same story. Like, we're gonna enter like a new pool. I'm gonna libel my tank. I'm gonna rejuve him potentially so I have a consumable hot. Or just simply libel him. You know, situationally, sometimes I can even like wild growth and then empower my my rejuice on people and consume the solar force that way, right? In this case, I just did like a rejuve into Swiftment because I wasn't sure what the pool's gonna be. This is a nature swiftness. He did proc in the end of the day because he got extra mechanics. He got bolted and he got charged by an enforcer. This was not in my list of expectations. I don't know if I could have really saved him either, to be honest. I just feel like this situation here was a little scuffed. Like, this setup was pretty bad. But it's okay. We kind of survived, and that's all that matters in the end. This pull was a bit unorthodox. He has never done this pull before, so this was like a surprise to all of us. Typically, he does this dragon stuff like a little bit delayed, not instantaneously. Like, he waits for like, I believe he does the pack here first, waits like for like a set of mechanics to happen and then chains, or pulls the dragon, does that and then chains. Here this time we went immediately and like, well, some evil things happened, but yeah. Either way, you could say the general gist of what I'm doing, right? It's always the exact same story. On charge perks, most of the time it's going to be tank because he's typically the one getting shafted. And same story, right? I'm holding my Solar Forest in case something happens, wild growth for mastery, and nothing else is going to happen, only tank is going to take damage, so I just immediately empower Rejuice instead. That gives him a big burst of healing. It also helps heal my Hunter, although I end up dispelling him in the end anyway, because I was lazy to do more than that, because I can just dispel it anyway. But I could have also just regrowthed him one time and same thing would happen, because I already gave him mastery value and, you know, a Rejuve hot plus wild growth. Same story, like, I would have preferred to hold this Soldier Forest, but I can't because it's about to expire. So, you know, I consume it on the tank. We get some free hots. It's not a bad deal. And he gets some mastery value plus I Swiftmended him again and I'm holding one again, right? Wild growth for mastery. I do a big regrowth because he's not high enough for Rejuve to potentially save him. Because if anything happens to him for some particular reason, like these leaping geists, well, the name implies it, right? They leap on people, so like if he got leapt, he could have been in danger, so I just chose to regrowth him and top him that way, right? You see like 146k, 148k, and I believe like there's like a 70k there somewhere or something, because, you know, it heals 3 people, right? This wasn't a bad deal for me, because he gets stopped, tank still gets like a free heal, and then like, you know, somebody else also gets like a free regrowth hot. Like, it's not bad to spread regrowths, is my point. It's very situational though, right? Like, there, if I knew that nothing would happen, I would still spread a rejuve anyway. Like, you just need to pay attention to your frames if you're playing with like Danders, for example, and you have targeted spells like this, right? Or, you know, if you're playing with like Platinator only or something like this, or like the Blizzard Flames, they show you who's getting cast on, right? So you just gotta be a little bit more aware of the situation and like what type of mobs you're fighting or boss. Because like certain bosses have like, you know, different mechanics, so you gotta deal with them a little bit differently, right? The general goal is always going to be the same. Like, I can show you, for example, like the Mysara we did today, like second boss, because that's kind of what you would care about, right? It's the most heal intense boss in the game. Even though it got nerfed, it's still quite heal intense. So we're going to be pulling this boss, and I'm going to be doing the exact same thing again. Over and over. Right? Like, I immediately empower here because this boss is a raw damage fight. And because he's getting the tank buster, so having this little spike heal on him with my live boom immediately from Apex Talent is very useful. That way he doesn't even have to use a defensive, because Stagger just carries him for free. Wild growth from mastery into immediately consuming Soldier Forest to just keep us afloat, because ads are gonna spawn soon. I want us to be healthy before. And now I'm gonna start swapping my live bloom. Apply some reduce manually, wild growth from mastery, ads are about to kiss, and then I'm gonna healing convoke into a Swiftment, reapply my live bloom, DPS the boss a little bit, wild growth from mastery, consume Soldier Forest once again to spike us. I was purposely holding it because I wanted the ads to kiss first. Swap my live bloom to stabilize the tank a little bit, immediately Swiftman him, go back to DPSing because we're very healthy right now and nothing is happening on the screen. Just keep applying some bleeds, wild growth from mastery, and consume Soldier Forest because it's going to expire, and I have a Swiftman coming up again, so I'm going to Swiftman again, and swap my live bloom, consume Soldier Forest immediately. He died to a frontal or a puddle, his corpse is right there. That is not our problem, can't fix that. Get a Seer on him. Swiftment in a second here. Rejuve into Swiftment. Actually, no, it's a regrowth because they were too low HP. And now I remember what happened. Wild growth into regrowth into swap light bloom into trank, I believe, is what this is gonna be. Or yeah, I think it is, yeah. Because he also the augmentation gives me spatial paradox, which lets me move and cast, which is very sexy and cool. We love this. Although I already moved like here in this section because there was no ball, so I could have been channeling anyway. It wouldn't make a difference. But you can see, like, you can fall behind, like, still, right? As a healer. It's just in general, like, every healer can fall behind. But as a druid, you saw, like, it wasn't that difficult to recover. If I played Paladin, Shaman, or, what's it called? Or Disc or something, I would have, like, taken so much more effort to, like, catch back up, right? Like, Druid's playstyle is just insane right now. And same thing, right? Wild Growth, change my symbiotic relationship to him because I believe it was still on tank and I don't need it anymore on tank. That's like also like a thing that you can semi-micromanage if you care. It is a little bit of free healing, right? But I'm just gonna Wild Growth, consume Soul the Forest to top him into one regrowth because I know he's gonna get lowered because the ads just kiss and into healing convoke. There I could have maybe even swapped my life bomb to him, I just didn't because I thought he would have barrier and be safe. Same thing, ads are gonna kiss, I Wild Growth for Mastery, Swiftment, and I immediately saw the forest on the hunter and it spreads to other people. And it also tops my evoker, my mage is safe. We're all chilling, right? I continue doing the same thing. I swap it over to the tank here for a little bit because he was getting a tank buster, right? Now I swap it back to someone else. And it's just a little back and forth constantly. Again, I just immediately consume Soul the Forest there. It's not that big of a deal because I'm gonna be... I believe I'm barking here maybe? Or I'm just gonna spam regrowths. Let's see which one it was. I don't remember. Light Bomb again, into Swiftment, into big regrowth, yes, because he's not full HP. I did also bark him. He gets stopped by this. I have back on myself. I'm gonna just Typhoon. Unsuccessful because I was too close. Don't do the same thing. I was trying to just be good to myself and like knock it so it goes in faster. But the issue is like I was too close, so it caught both of them. Here I should have walked a little bit back and then Typhoon, so only one of them goes in. Don't do that. And same thing, you know. Make sure I'm wall growthing as much as I can before damage. And just swap my light bomb as I need to. Swiftman immediately. Refresh my light bomb to get a pandemic into reduce spread. And now I'm just gonna have to like regrowth a little bit. Wild growth for mastery into healing convoke to stabilize us. Into swiftment, into reduce spread if I need to. Either way, I'm gonna swiftman regardless. I swap my light bomb to the tank. And then yeah, I didn't even need to consume. Normally I would consume like a Soul Forest with a rejuve to stabilize the tank there. Here I'm gonna just do it because my Soul Forest is expiring, right? I refresh it just to get a pandemic because it was gonna expire anyway, and then we're gonna swap it very soon here. Should be. Swap it to Evoker. Here the tank soaked it with his face. I did not expect this, as you can tell by my reaction time being like tiny bit slow. Because my expectation here was like, oh, the ads are gonna kiss in like a second, I'm gonna wild growth into reduce spread, right? It still worked out, but it was a little wonky. I wasn't a fan of this when it happened. It doesn't change my gameplay though. It just makes it more confusing for everybody involved. But I'm continuing to do the same thing. If I have like a bunch of hots on a guy and he's kind of dipped, I'll use him as a swiftman target as well. In this case, the mage. Then I refresh my light bloom as well. Wild growth, consume Soul the Forest with a rejuve, and then I have nature swiftness if anybody dips, and I do that exactly on hunter just in case, because who knows what they're gonna do. Maybe they soak the ad, who the fuck knows. They didn't, so I didn't actually need to do anything, but you know, after the first time somebody face soaked an ad, I was like, okay, what the hell are we doing, friends? Please no. And that's the general gist of it, right? Like, it's just a lot of like, you know, sometimes bark people, manage your light bloom, swiftman as much as you can, wild growth as much as you possibly can before damage, because it gives you mastery and it's a swiftmanable hot, right? You have many reasons to do it. And again, same story, right? 170k HPS just doing that. We did have like a couple of oopsies that people forced. They were never going to happen naturally, but people forced them by mistakes, right? So I was forced to regrowth a couple of times more aggressively than I should have. But it's fine. I guess you could say it's okay, right? At the end of the day, the boss died. and we collected loot, so that's all that matters. You can adapt a little bit, you know, like it is what it is what I would say to that. But you can see what I'm doing in terms of gameplay, right? It's not particularly like the core gameplay is not difficult at heart. It's just very, how to say, it's very active, very intense gameplay sometimes. You gotta make like a lot of decisions on the fly, right? So that I can understand if that gets like a little overwhelming at first, but the more you play, the better you will get at it. I promise you. It's very, very satisfying gameplay. That is the general gist of the situation. I could check like other instances as well and stuff, but I just wanted like to show you like some good examples of like the gameplay. I mean, to be fair, like if I check any of my keys, there would be the same example, but like I just wanted to show like particular fights that you might be having like some issues with. But the other thing is like in general, like on Vardaza, I tend to essentially like I just try to use as many convokes as I can for like the soaks, and then like in intermission, you typically have enough healing passively, but if you don't, you can always press a trank. I try to save my trank for intermission shield most of the time and not during the regular phase if I can. Because I find it like a little wonky to try to like stand still and like, you know, trank when people can run their ads into me and kill me randomly, right? Like it's happened like once before and I've never done it ever since because of it. One thing happens one time, never again, right? Because this is like a voiceless group, right? We don't communicate here, only through chat. Sometimes, when stuff happens. Otherwise, no. Otherwise, we just press W, play the game, you know. But anyway, like I tend to just try to basically like, use as many convokes as I possibly can, and I tend to use it on the first soak, on the first set, like it's about to happen here. That way you get as many convokes as you possibly can, and it helps you stabilize so you can do the soaks pretty quickly so people don't have to be stressed about it, and then they can focus on doing DPS. And the boss will die faster, and you will heal less. You can, of course, like shift your cooldowns a little bit better for yourself, for your own personal preferences, but this is just how I found the boss to work for me, personally, right? It doesn't change the rest of your gameplay, obviously. The rest of your gameplay is always going to be the same, that's just how it is. But yeah, that aside, do I have any final thoughts about anything that I can think of? Hard to say. We covered talents, we covered stats, we covered the basic gameplay, we covered damage, and we covered what to generally do inside of a key. I'm uncertain what else I can really talk about. Is there anything that is worth mentioning? Well, you guys can tell me in the comments for like a future video or something like that. But for the moment, this is going to be our quote-unquote guide, something gameplay example explanation video, you know? Well, either way, hopefully this was at least partially helpful to some of you as a example, because I know that like, I mean, I'm not gonna be like that guy and be like, oh, you know, people ask me all the time, but like I do get like fairly frequent questions about this kind of like, hey man, are you gonna make a guide or like this and that? It's like, usually I haven't even considered it, but in this case, let's try it out, right? Let's try it out. I have never done this kind of thing, so maybe it's good, maybe not. We'll find out. You guys will decide that. But for now, though, it is getting quite late for me locally. Not to say that it's already morning almost and I haven't slept, so I bid you farewell, and I'll see you guys in the comments. Hopefully it was useful, and if I missed something, just throw it down in the comments and I can at least reply to you if nothing else. But for the moment though, I'll see you guys in the next video, which is either going to be like a key upload or, well, probably a key upload. We'll see. For now though, see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.